Got mushrooms on it or last year.
I'd like to call a meeting to order, please. Ms. Ford, will you call the roll?
Chairman Wingate.
Here.
Vice Chairman Robinson. Here. Dr. Highlander.
Here.
Mrs. Hill. Here. Mrs. Jones. Here. Mrs. Lena.
Here.
Mr. McClendon.
Here.
Mr. Smith. Here. Mrs. Sermon. Here. Mr. Taylor.
Here.
Superintendent Dr. Johnson.
Here. Okay, I have the following requests to amend the agenda. First, under the consent agenda, item A, I'd like to add approval of the minutes of the July 25th special call session. Then under item 7, administrative business matters, I'd like to add item B, Dr. Ken Bradshaw, Chief of Operations with the disciplinary hearing authority. And then also, between items 4 and 5, add delegations. We have one speaker, Ms. Jeanette O'Markell. All right. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve. Second. Dr. Highlander.
Yes.
Mrs. Hill.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mrs. Lena.
Yes.
Mr. McClendon.
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Sermon.
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. Next, we will have our pledge to the flag and our meditation brought to us by Ms. Tiffany Irvin, Principal of Orchard Knob Middle.
Good evening.
Okay.
Dr. Johnson, Chairman Wingate, and members of the board. As I reflected on the announcement yesterday about our school district and the precedents that was set by several schools and the district as a whole, I thought about our students, and of course our leadership, but more specifically I thought about our teachers. And so I have a poem to read. It's called Teachers by Kevin and William Huff. Teachers paint their minds and guide their thoughts. They share their achievements and advise their faults. They inspire a love of knowledge and truth as you light the path which leads our youth. For our future brightens with each lesson that they teach, each smile they lengthen, each goal they help reach. For the dawn of each poet and philosopher and king begins with a teacher and the wisdom that they bring. Since I've been in education, I've never forgotten that it takes a teacher to create all other professions. And for that, my teachers as well, I am immensely grateful. So as I thought back and continue to think on the district's successes and its precedents that has been set, I want to make sure we continue to honor all of our teachers. At this time, we can stand for the pledge. Salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May be seated.
Thank you, Mrs. Irvin. Brings us to our exemplars of excellence. First, we will have some JROTC achievements by Lieutenant Colonel Bill Brooks, Director of our JROTC.
Chairman Wingate, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Johnson. Good afternoon. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Bill Brooks, the Director for JROTC. First, I want to thank you for this opportunity to introduce and recognize 3 JRTC programs for excellence during Chattanooga's Armed Forces Day Parade in May 2019. The schools that are present today are Red Bank, and those members are Principal Harper, Vice Principal Weathers, Major Spencer, and Cadet Cece. Just come on up, please. From Central High School, Principal Averani, Major Spencer, and Cadet Seelman and Mullins. It's good to see you. We were teachers together. And Hickson High School, present are Vice Principal Williams, Major Carbone, Cadets Mingo, Lewis, and Pagar. Also with us today, or this evening, is the President or the Chairman of the Chattanooga Area Veterans Council, Ms. T.J. Jordan, and Colonel Chris Dooley, who will make some remarks and present the plaques.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Superintendent Dr. Johnson, Chairman Wingate, board members. On behalf of the Chattanooga Area Veterans Council, we'd like to thank you for allowing the participation in the Community Service Project and support for our Chattanooga and our Hamilton County parade. We appreciate the patriotism and the support from the people present with us today. We're going to present third place, Hickson High School. Central. And our first place, Red Bank. Thank you for allowing us here today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Congratulations to all of you. Next, we'll have a recognition, Dr. Brian Johnson.
Absolutely. I'm going to actually give the privilege of recognition to somebody that knows Jeremiah real well. And so I'm going to ask Ms. Caritza Jones to introduce Jeremiah and tell us all the good and all the inside. I will say this, Jeremiah's a phenomenal young man. Let me say what I know about him really quickly. He's on student advisory. He is actually the student board rep. And a student at CSAS, and just a phenomenal young man, and a snazzy dresser too. Gonna put pressure on me each month to step my game up. But I'm gonna turn it over to Ms. Jones to tell us a little bit more about Jeremiah.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. It is my extreme honor to introduce to you an outstanding young man. Here, being educated here in our public schools of Hamilton County. His name is Jeremiah Taylor. Jeremiah is a senior at Chattanooga School for the Arts and Sciences, where he has attended since he was in the first grade. He is the oldest of 3 boys, born to his parents, Anthony Taylor, who's in the audience, and Mrs. Virginia Taylor, they're in the audience tonight. Anthony also is an educator here in our system. Jeremiah, I don't know, there's a lot of words that describe Jeremiah, but one word that I would tell you is that he is extraordinary. Jeremiah is a musician. He plays the organ in his church. He is also a member of the concert band at CSAS. He plays the trumpet. He has been in all state bands, am I correct? He has participated in Boys State. He is a member of the Kappa League. He is in the CSAS Paideia Society, and he is currently the president or chair of the Superintendent Student Advisory Council. Most importantly, not only is Jeremiah a student at my alma mater, which I am very proud, but I'm also proud because Jeremiah is my nephew. I am very proud of him. We are all very proud of him, and we are anticipating great things to come in his future. He has several schools that he's looking at in the future when he graduates in May, and we just can't wait to see what Jeremiah is going to do and become as he's already becoming. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Jeremiah Taylor, our student school board member for 2019-2020.
Fritz Mosley Jones. There's one other relative, a young man. I'm very proud of this nephew, but there's another young man I would like for you to introduce to us, if you would, please. That we're all so happy to have here.
Okay, he's asleep, I believe, but he's awake. But as you all know, I am a mother of several duties, so I was passing him off today to my husband. Is he still in here? But my son is here today. His name is William Elias Jones II. We call him EJ. He's very quiet, so we won't disturb the least. But no, he is very precious, and I'm so very proud and excited and thankful for the blessing that he is to us.
Okay, that brings us to our delegations. Ms. Jeanette O'Markell.
All right, Jeanette, I feel like you know this by now, but I'm going to read it anyways, because I haven't been here in a while. So.
I missed you.
Thank you for your interest in addressing the Hamilton County Board of Education. During the presentation, please address the board as a whole, not individual board members or administrators. Also, do not present complaints or concerns you have about an individual employee of the school system. If you wish to voice those complaints and concerns, you should contact central office and ask for a meeting with the superintendent. If you're criticizing an individual employee, I will interrupt you and ask you to refrain. If you continue to criticize the individual employees, or if your remarks are in error or are becoming repetitive, I may interrupt you and ask you to sit down. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes. I'll tell you when you have 1 minute left. You may begin.
Chairman Wingate, Dr. Johnson, and members of the board. Yesterday's news was exciting, and the evidence that what has been said all year is true. Educators worked above and beyond to make such amazing scores, and they aren't stopping now. They are working hard to continue this momentum. The budget roller coaster has helped our teachers find their voice, and they are speaking up and speaking out. The status quo is not enough. The PECA team was put into a position to necessitate a decision to honor a balance between supports and getting monetary increase into our educators' salary this year. The final decision was not popular with all, but it was what the entire team felt was necessary for this year only. We are not walking away from the table. We will not stop asking for what we are worth. As has been proven in the scores delivered, 80% of your teachers met or exceeded expectations. We are committed to working with our commissioners as the funding body, you as our school board, the district and the state to move the needle of our compensation to the level of excellence educators have proven they deserve, and to provide what our students need in supports to continue their journey of success. Our teachers are speaking up and are rallying. They are collecting data. For the first 10 days of this data collection, August 2nd through August 11th, with just 35 teachers reporting, we have the following data for you. 723 uncompensated hours. If calculating at just $30 per hour, that's $21,690 in donated time in less than 10 calendar days, and that's only 35 teachers. These same teachers have spent $6,391 of their own money that will not be reimbursed, for an average of $182 per teacher in the first 10 days of school. And this does not have the amounts they spent over the summer as they saw sales. We will continue to collect data throughout the year, and more teachers are beginning to add to the document as word gets out, and we will keep you posted. As we look towards next year and begin the budget conversations now, we have to think outside the box and be willing to make some major changes in our thinking about public education in Hamilton County. We have to move past the arguing, blaming, shaming, and finger pointing and come together as a community to make this happen. We Are Hamilton is more than a hashtag. It's a rallying cry to everyone who lives in this county. We must work together to find the solution that is the best for our district, to continue our journey, to be the one people look to as leading the way in education in Tennessee and ultimately in the southeast region of the country. To be the one that others are coming to as the example of what great education looks like, instead of buses flocking to Atlanta to see Ron Clark's private school. We cannot and will not accept the status quo any longer. We cannot and will not allow our educators, which includes our classified staff and administrators, to be underpaid in our profession. We cannot and will not have an either-or mentality. We need both and. The time is now to continue what has begun and join our voices and our actions to create an amazing school system that respects all and shows it through our actions, our stories, and our results. Thank you.
All right, we will now receive a future ready update from Dr. Brian Johnson.
Shannon Moody's actually going to help me with this. We'll go into some numbers here. So obviously yesterday we shared the exciting news about our student academic growth. Today we'll talk a little more deeply about achievement and really have a much clearer picture of the entire picture. So when we began our work, we talked about becoming the fastest improving school system in the state of Tennessee, and have shared that regularly, and that improvement not just being about student academic achievement, but being about everything we do organizationally as a school system. Just kind of looking at this presentation you have before you, we'll give you some background context. I think it's important to talk about where we've been, where the system has been. We'll look at achievement, and Shannon will talk to us about TVOS and district accountability, and then I'll share the school accountability pieces as well as teacher accountability and some next steps. So as we look at where we've been, the four areas that I really want to elevate are English language learners, special education, obviously the conversation around the state, and the overall academic performance of our system. So when we talk about English language learners, it's important to note, and I think it's important for you all to know as a board, that it is about making sure that all learners have exactly what they need in order to be successful. In 2016, 2015, 2016, 2017, the district actually applied for waivers to the state. It was essentially out of compliance from the standpoint of the staffing ratio that is required. Obviously, you see between 2016 and 2020, we've had to add roughly 30 positions to the ELL area in order to get in compliance. But the reality is, we know that all students matter, and I think as we go through, you'll see the dividends. In regards to special education, it's kind of the same conversation. We've obviously done a lot from the standpoint of this budget cycle of working towards those inclusive settings as necessary for students to be successful. And then in regards to the state context and conversation, this is a data shot that I put up with our senior leadership team. I have it on my desktop saved just so I can click on from time to time, but I think it's really, really important to note. You may not notice there, so I will read. This article came from the Times Free Press on 3/11/2001, and it ranked the top 20 ranking schools that were in Hamilton County. And those schools in 2001 were Lookout Mountain, Nolan Elementary, Signal Mountain Middle, and Thrasher Elementary. The lowest 20 ranking schools in Hamilton County were Calvin Donaldson, Clifton Hills, East Lake Elementary, East Lake Academy, East Side Elementary, Franklin Middle, which we know is no longer here, Hardy, Howard Elementary, Orchard Knob Elementary, and Orchard Knob Middle. And so I think as we look at that, obviously, and look at 2016-17, those areas, those schools, it was still a lot of the same way. Other areas of challenge, as we talk about the system, is that there was some need for post-secondary readiness and such, and then the overall district performance. When you look in particular at the last 3 years, 14, 15, 15, 16, 16, 17, even going all the way back to 12, 13, whether it was one in literacy. Obviously, our students weren't and haven't been achieving and growing at the level that we would desire, I think anybody would desire as a school system. Other areas of challenge, post-secondary and workforce readiness, knowing that students are actually future ready and prepared for jobs and opportunities. Student subgroup performance, I mentioned a few of those subgroups up there, but when we talk about special ed and we talk about ELL, Black, Hispanic, Native American, those areas that we're held accountable to, there's definitely need there. Opportunity gaps, making sure that all students have exposure, really being intentional about our strategic direction and goals. We celebrated a touch this evening about policy review and updates, organizational structure and alignment, which you'll see in regards to our results. I attribute a lot of it to you as a board really challenging us to look at our systems and our structures. Priority-based budgeting, making sure in the past, not feeling as though the dollars are spent towards things that aren't going to actually improve student achievement. Capital and facilities management, maintenance, transportation, and technology. You see those things that are there. So those are kind of our challenges, ELL, special ed, some of these areas that existed, as well as making sure that we serve, every single child. So how have we responded? Obviously, had the privilege of coming here to begin to serve in July 2017. And again, this is another one of those slides or those photographs that I hold really near and dear as I serve in this capacity, because this is what you said as a board was extremely important to you. When you all said that 5 years from now, this is what we want the headlines to be. And I would definitely point you to the last one, where you said Hamilton County Schools is proving itself to be the fastest improving school district in the last 5 years. And so this is what we said we wanted the headlines to be. Then from that vision that you all had, and from the work that you all have done as a board around the strategic plan, we worked to put together a strategic plan collaboratively with key performance indicators that outlined every area of our organization. And then specifically with the acceleration of student achievement, we know that at the end of the day, that's the heartbeat of what we do. The teaching that takes place in the classroom, the learning that takes place in the classroom, that's why we all are here. And so when we look at accelerated student achievement, and I think that the headline today got it right, it's not magic. It is about sticking to the right work and doing the right work all the time. And we want to make sure that our teachers keep understood the standards, that they set very clear and understandable learning targets for students. We want to make sure that our assessments were aligned and that we will continue to move towards mastery of those assessments. That our teachers, as they always do, use the best instructional practices and then intervene to close the opportunity gap for all learners that are there. And so there are some key takeaways and the results of what we did together, and I'll turn it over to Shannon so that she can take us through the achievement and growth results.
Sure. And I honestly just learned that I'm a fabulous clicker for you, so you should take me everywhere. I didn't miss a beat. I need to better explain data though, so that's why I'm here.
She's interviewing, I'm Director of Accountability and Research, and so we do all the numbers. We kind of look at those, and then we try to help explain the numbers that we're looking at. So I'm excited today to talk to you guys about the results that we saw in Hamilton County. You probably read a lot of them. It's like, I'll be honest, it's like Christmas morning for me when I wake up on data release day. I get really excited. I can't sleep the night before, and so I'm happy that this fell on data release day, that we could get to you on the same day. So some of the key takeaways from our results that we'll be digging into is that the board adopted a strategic plan with bold and ambitious goals that helped us meet these historic results. And so for the first time since 2011, the district surpassed the state in the achievement average in several areas that we'll look into. Achievement gains were in nearly all areas. In high schools, which the state called out for us in their own press release, we improved by at least 5% in each area, and we'll talk a little bit about that one as well. Across the board, we exceeded growth expectations, which we looked at yesterday with the level 5 growth in all major categories. And then, like we heard yesterday as well, 80% of our teachers met or exceeded student growth expectations. We also saw, as we dug into some of this data today, that Hamilton County School ranked number 1 of 142 districts in student growth. And so we'll dig into a little bit of the metric that we're looking at there in grades 3, 5. And then we ranked number 2 of 146 districts in overall growth. Like you heard, we had 45 schools earn an overall level 5 growth rating and 32 schools earn reward status. It made for 50 unique schools that had some kind of distinction, whether it was reward, level 5, or both. We saw this, we started digging, and we saw that this reach was what we say wide and deep. Right? Every learning community had pieces to celebrate. Every subject area, every subgroup we saw gains. So this is something that we're really digging into as we look at this. And we know that these results are like the results of the tireless effort of our school and our teachers. Right? Those are the people that drive these numbers as we're looking at this. So we're going to dig in today achievement and growth. On data release day, there's all kinds of stuff that comes out, and we worked, right, to figure out what are the main things to really catch up today. And so before we get into each one of these, I do want to set the stage on achievement versus growth. And some of y'all may remember me at this time last year actually talking to you about a running track when we talk about achievement and growth. And you'll probably hear me every year coming back to that running track. It's my thing, right? It's what I'll bring up every time we're talking about the two. So when I was first learning about achievement and growth in Tennessee, it was explained to me as a running track, and it really helped me solidify the concept that has helped me really explain the difference between achievement results and growth results when we see them. So if we think of a running track, right, we have a clear finish line, and kids can cross the finish line. Or runners, I guess, can cross the finish line. When we're talking about achievement in education, we're talking about kids meeting a standard. So we have a certain standard that's set at every grade level that says if you can perform at this level, then you're meeting the standards of that grade level. You're meeting what you're supposed to hit. Right? That's the same line for every kid across the state. That's set at the same place. That's like the finish line on the track. So when we're looking at things like percent on track or percent mastered, we're looking at how many kids crossed that finish line. In a perfect world in education, right? All kids would come into the next grade level lined up on the starting lines, ready to run the race for the year, and all would finish on the finish line. The reality is our kids come to us all over the track. Right? We have kids that are already way past that starting line, coming to us halfway around the track. We have kids that are at the starting line, some that are just behind, some that are 3 loops back from the starting line. So while achievement measures how many cross the line, growth is taking the same track and looking at it a slightly different way. And it's saying how many of those kids actually made their loop around the track from their own starting point. So a kid that is halfway around the track, it's not in growth world good enough to just get to that finish line and cross it. You've got to make your loop around the track. But the same for the kid that's 3 loops back, right? We're not in growth expecting them to run 3 loops plus to get to the finish line, but looking to see did they make at least their loop around the track. So as we look at these numbers, we'll be looking at achievement because that's really important to know how many of our kids made the standard, but it's also really important to know how many of our kids are making their loop around the track. Or when I say that conceptually, I mean keeping their place in the distribution among their peers. So let's talk about achievement results now. I won't hold them any longer. Right? Achievement, like we talked about, is a defined standard. It's a cut score. It's helping us evaluate a student's mastery of grade level standards. And it compares different cohorts of kids from year to year. So the kids that were 3rd graders one year, we compare to kids that are 3rd graders the next year to see how is that measure looking year over year. And it's a snapshot in time. All of this is a test score of 1 point in time. The grade that the test that they take actually has different levels that they can score. So they can score in below, approaching, on track, or mastered. And that finish line, that cut that we're kind of talking about, is there between approaching and on track and mastered. So when we're looking at these numbers today, we're counting up how many students met that on track or mastered level, which means that they demonstrated an understanding of the grade level standard. And again, some of the takeaways that we saw in achievement is that for the first time since 2011, we surpassed the state in 5 of 8 grade band subject areas. We improved achievement faster than the state in 7 of those 8 areas. Our subgroup achievement improved faster than the state. Our high school EOCs, right, at least 5 percentage points. And all of these things that we put in place, we believe that really yielded to the strong results that we see. So here's where we say Hamilton County schools made gains in nearly all areas when we look at 1 year comparatively to the next. So in this slide, you see grade bands and subjects. in our accountability system, the state cuts us out into 3rd through 5th grade bands, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. And then we look at math, ELA, and then social studies where it was tested. So we see our results in 17-18, our results in 18-19, and anywhere you see green, that is a place where that result actually increased. What you'll notice here is the amount of increase. Right? So you'll see several places where we're up over 5% of our students from one year to the next. And the magnitude of that, just to bring us back to it, we're a large school district. So when you talk about 5% of students, that is a large number of students, a substantial number of students that actually we see meeting that finish line that we didn't see the year before. Right? Sometimes we get lost in percentages, and I think it's helpful to bring it back to those numbers of students. Usually in things like large districts, statewide results, anything like 3%, even 5% is a pretty dramatic gain when you look at something that large. So particularly to call out high school, as was mentioned in the state press release, every single subject in our high school areas had at least a 5% gain. So we think of the magnitude of 5%. Every single subject area saw that from year over year. So the green bar here you're looking at is 17-18, the blue bar is 18-19 to represent that change in every subject. Then we dug into, so okay, we had a great year, right? We saw a lot of gain, but how does this compare to what the state did? Right? So we looked at our gain, our performance year over year compared to the state's performance year over year to see where were we making more improvement than the state was in each area. So we see that 7 of the 8 areas, we actually had a greater gain than the state showed this year, right? Which is this idea of gap closure. Right? We're making progress on that as well. And then for the first time, we saw that we're actually outperforming the state in 5 of these 8 areas. So as you notice on this graphic, last year, there were 0 areas where we actually outperformed the state. Versus this year, we see 5 of those areas were actually up above the state average when we look at these metrics. And then we always dig into our subgroups of students. That's a really important story for us. It's part of our federal and state accountability to look at subgroups of students. What we're looking at here is what's called the super subgroup. What this is an easy metric to look at. It's actually a combination of all of our major subgroups. So our major subgroups are Black, Hispanic, Native American students, economically disadvantaged students, English language learners, and students with disabilities. So this is combining everyone into one group and counting kids only one time. So we're looking to see, again, are we improving faster than the state is improving with our subgroups? And we find in 6 of these 8 areas, we are improving faster. Our gain was stronger than the gain at the state level. We did find in most of these areas, it mirrored what we saw with all students, where we were making gains from 17-18 to 18-19 as well. And then we come to our Focus 5 targets from the Future Ready 2023 plan. So we set our own targets, right? You said as a board, here are important metrics that we want to focus on for Hamilton County Schools, one of which was 3rd grade ELA. Our baseline was 33.7% of kids scoring at that finish line, that on track and mastered. Our target that we set for ourselves this year on that 5-year trajectory was 36%, and we ended at 36.3%. So we met the target there. Yeah. In Algebra 1, we're looking at this including all Algebra 1 test takers, so middle school as well, where we saw our baseline was at 22%. Again, for our 5-year trajectory and our goals, we said we wanted to be at 25.2, and we met it at 27.5%. And what this means in terms of numbers, right, there's over 1,200 students in 3rd grade who are reading on track or mastered or scoring that way on the test. And then over 800 students are on track and mastered in Algebra 1, which is about 200 more than we saw the previous year. We've seen those gains as well. Again, subgroups of students. Looking at our subgroups, our underperforming subgroups is vitally important as well. And we look at 2 metrics here. We look at the success rate, which kind of combines ELA and math together to get one overall proficiency rate. And then we're looking at the reduction of kids scoring in that lowest category, that below category, which is just as meaningful of a move as we're talking about moving kids forward towards gains. So in 2018, we're at 17.4%. We set a goal for ourselves to be at 20.5% of success rate with super subgroup, and we made it to 21.9, right? And then the below reduction, which is one that I'm particularly proud of when I look at this. I think it gives us another look at the data in a different way. We saw that 43.7% of our kids in the super subgroup were scoring at the lowest category. We had a goal to reduce that to 41, and we reduced it to 38.4, which was over a 5% reduction. That was like 1,600 additional test scores, right? Because we're looking at math and reading. So test scores to be on track or mastered, and 1,400 additional tests not being in the below, right? At least moving to the approaching category. So huge performances there. So again, the takeaways that we've mentioned, right? But now you've seen the numbers behind it. We've surpassed the state. We improved faster than the state in several areas. We saw these large percentage gains, which a district that size is a really meaningful change. And we saw how these strategies were yielding towards the results. Which leads me into my favorite thing to talk about, which is TVOS growth. And I know you've seen it, right? But we're still going to talk about it anyway. So when we talk about TVOS growth, it's that other side of the track. It's the students making one loop around the track or meeting their growth expectations. This is the measure that our state used to evaluate teachers, schools, and districts. Right? One of the measures, because it helps us measure the effect on student learning, not just crossing the finish line. It compares the same cohort from year over year. So the other ones we're looking at are different cohorts of kids. This is the same cohort. And it considers their performance over time of the same kids. When we look at TVOS, there's different levels. Level 1 to level 5. We heard a lot about that yesterday. Level 1 and level 2 indicate that there's a level of evidence, whether it's significant or moderate, that students are falling behind others. So the concept is they're not making their loop around the track. The reality is they're falling behind in the distribution when we look across the state. Right? A level 4 or 5 means there's a level of evidence, either moderate or significant, that kids are outpacing their peers or making more than one loop around the track. They're moving forward in that distribution. And a level 3 means they held their ground, right? They made that loop around the track. One thing to point out here, because we will get into it, is the index. So a level 5, you'll notice, is anyone with a 2 or higher index is given a level 5 score. But there's a range of that index. So that can go much higher than 2, and it's letting us know how confident we are that that is a true evidence of significant gain. And the same with level 1. It can go much lower than a 2, but anything at a 2 or below is considered a level 1. So there are varying levels of 5s and 1s. So this is where we're seeing that number 1 in growth index for grade 5. When we talk about the index, it allows us to, by ranking in the way that it does, or pulling in the way that it does, it allows us to actually compare districts apples to apples. So that index score uses a standard error. I'm not going to get you too deep into this, I promise, right? But it allows us to actually account for the size of the district so that we can compare districts apples to apples. And so this is an apples to apples comparison that allows us to look and see what is our performance ranking among other districts as far as that level 5 is concerned. And ours was the number 1 in 3-5 growth index. Number 2 of all grades. So we know that they exceeded expectations. We know that this is historic, right? As we look at past history, we haven't seen anything like this on the report card. And we know that this is significant evidence. That level 5 means there's significant evidence that our students outpace their peers or made more than one loop around the track. So here's where we were in 2016-17. I remember last year putting this up on the screen to see, okay, what are we comparing to, right? We notice a lot of that red, a lot of that level 1, which again means that we at least had a -2 index. It means we were falling behind our peers, not making that loop around the track. Almost everywhere. We came into 17-18 and saw that start to change. But we still see areas where we are not making our loop around the track. We are falling behind our peers in certain areas, and we're really trying to focus. We look at the system-wide composite, which means that we held our ground. We weren't falling behind, and we saw that we held our ground last year. This is where we stand in 1819. I'm just going to do it again because I've been waiting for this all day. So what you see here clearly is a sea of blue and green, right? Which is a sea of outpacing peers. So you guys know I worked at the state before this and worked with a lot of different districts on their results. This kind of result, one, is not typical, and two, is not a fluke, right? You don't see 5s across the board everywhere without intentional, purposeful change happening. So it's a pretty amazing metric to see at this point. We know that all of this means they're exceeding growth expectations, and it means that we're improving the trajectory, like the instructional and learning trajectory for students in each of these areas that we see. Again, this is historic, and we can know that by looking back at the report card. So there's no other time in public reporting history that we saw 5s across the board at this level to really say in all areas we're outpacing our peers or making that leap around the track for us, or exceeding that leap around the track for our students. So we talked about this index and this growth metric that helps us rank, right? And we've talked about how we're the second highest overall, which is, I think I've glanced by that because I've looked at it all day. That's really phenomenal to be second highest overall. We see we're number 1 in 3rd through 5th grade, number 16 out of 142 in 6th through 8th grade, and number 17 out of 136 in 9th through 12th grade. So we're up there with every single one of them. I think that is. I'm gonna cut that. So again, to recap, the number 1 and the number 2 areas here, exceeding growth expectations, seeing this as historic, and knowing that this is evidence, it's significant evidence is what the stat behind it means that we're growing. So our district accountability result came back as well. We had a goal in Future Ready 2023 of what our result would be. We came back as an advancing school district. So there's 5 levels. It goes from needs of improvement all the way to the highest being exemplary, the second highest being advancing. So this is up from satisfactory the year before. Okay. What we see is the overall average we scored was a 2.7. It takes getting to a 3.1 to be exemplary. So we were not far from an exemplary school district. They take this through several measures. They ultimately boil down to our overall achievement and our subgroup achievement. That's why we continually look at our performance of subgroups. We see that we were right on the line, 0.1 more, and we would have been exemplary in all student achievement, but we still have gains to make in our subgroups if we want to see ourselves pop into the overall exemplary status of the way that this accountability metric works. Which leads us to school accountability results. So I'm going to take the role again of being a clicker and let Dr. Johnson really talk us through our school accountability results.
Sure. So pretty briefly, when you look at school accountability, you see the 3-year comparison there. The biggest thing I point you to, there's a lot to talk about within there. I mean, first of all, we have 45 level 5 schools, up from 25 the year before, and up from 23 the year before that. But what I definitely draw your eye to is the 8 versus the 26 versus the 30 at the level 1 schools. And so what you see is between our level 3, 4, and 5 schools, you see that number has grown immensely. And again, it's a testament to what our teachers are doing in the classrooms and our leaders are doing in the building. And obviously we have a goal to reduce that to where you don't have any that are red or that are what's the color salmon. We'll go with. But the reality is there was an exponential improvement there. This next slide is what really excites us. And so in 2018, our baseline was 44 schools that were a level 3, 4, or 5. The target this year was 47 schools that were 3, 4, 5. Based on our teen ready result for 2018-19, we have 66 schools that are a level 3, 4, or 5. And I would put a pin on this at the bottom. The 5-year target, the target for 2023 was to have 63 schools that are level 3, 4, 5. So we've blown that target out of the water. And again, kudos to our teachers and leaders. And that's what we're doing for students. Shannon talked a little bit about reward status, and so very similar to the district accountability of 3.1 or higher. It's on a scale of 3.1 or higher out of 4 points is the equivalent of an A for a reward school. It is a combination of achievement, TBOS, chronic absenteeism, graduation rate, and ELPA, English language proficiency. And so Shannon earlier talked about the width and the depth. What you see is that schools in every learning community, we have level 5 schools in every learning community, and we would have had reward schools in every learning community. Calvin Donaldson and Clifton Hills would have been reward schools this year. Because they were in priority status, the way the rules are written, they can't be reward schools, but they would have absolutely been reward schools. So it is really, again, when you look at what our schools did this past year, and obviously the charter's over there as well, when you look at what our schools did this year, it is really phenomenal, and again, a testament to the work that's happening in our school buildings.
Do they get a level 5 banner?
They will absolutely get a banner, and there's more to come on banners and everything else. We look forward to celebrate with schools. And then, when we get a little more granular and begin to look at our teachers, what you see is that our teachers, kind of the same story there, right? So when we look at the level of effectiveness, we see that 80% of our teachers meet or exceed the growth expectation, and that is a dramatic improvement when we look at 16, 17, and then obviously in our first year of data, 17, 18, to see this type of reduction in percentages is significant, and the increase of 4 and 5 level teachers. So again, the key takeaways as we look at this, it is the fact that, I firmly believe that we have a plan. You identified, codified, and we will continue to work. For the first time since 2011, we out-achieved the state in 5 of 8 areas. The achievement gains were almost across the board versus, the previous year. Our high schools continue to move their work forward. And again, as mentioned, pointed out by the state that we had at least a 5 percentage point gain in every assessed area. And then we exceeded the growth expectation and the work that our teachers did. We talked about being one of 142 in 3 through 5 and 2 of 146 overall in regards to student academic growth. 45 level 5 schools, 50 unique schools that are award schools, and we talked about the width and the depth. And then our families that have to and have supported public education. So, we talked about this idea of excellence. Yesterday was about expecting excellence and making sure that every student has access to an excellent teacher, which we know we have a ton of them here in Hamilton County Schools. Every teacher, we firmly believe, needs access to an excellent leader, and every school deserves access to excellent resources. So, talking just a little bit about next steps, we definitely want to celebrate. I think, sometimes our teachers, our leaders, even us as staff members, you all as a board, we put our heads down and just focus on the work. But it's important to lift your head up for a moment and look at what you accomplished over the previous year. And I say that to all the teachers and leaders that are out there, and be really proud of what you and your students did in the buildings. Celebrate that, because that's the fuel that our system will need to take the next steps. We want to replicate and scale the work. And so Justin and his team, and obviously doing work in innovation and making sure we're supporting children. We want to make sure that we scale the work that we're doing so that it is the absolute norm. We have to continue to focus on literacy instruction, so we don't hide from the fact that literacy is a place in regards to achievement where there's been some stagnation. We thought it was extremely important that we resource that area to a level that we need to resource it to move our literacy work forward, and are excited to be able to do some things within our budget and curriculum resources as well. Our curriculum guides, again, our teaching and learning team, I saw Ms. Easterly, Stephanie was a part of that, so many others, teacher leaders that really make sure our curriculum guides are tightly aligned to the state blueprints, and that our teachers, and I say this all the time, and I think it's important to say this. So 80% of our teachers were level 3, 4, or 5. Our retention rate hovers around 90%. And I think the key is, somebody was saying this earlier, most of the teachers that you see that are effective or highly effective in the school leaders, etc., they're a lot of the same people. And it's not that our teachers or our leaders or anybody wasn't working hard and working to get the results. We as a district owe it to them to make sure that we align the resources, we put the absolute best resources in their hand, and that we support them. And we believe we can do even better with that. And so, but you can see what the results are when you begin to do that with intentionality. We've got to get even more intentional with RTI and the way we intervene with students. Very proud of the fact that we begin to move students that were below forward, but we've got to accelerate that even more. We've got to support our social and emotional needs of our students. So they're out of time classroom, it impacts them. So things such as the behavior support, the ISS, etc. Those things are helpful from the hard standpoint. But we've got to support the whole child as we go forward. And then we must maintain and sustain results. And so it's great to accelerate student achievement. The real work is how to repeat. And I started out talking about Alabama. I know they didn't win the national championship last year, so I had talked about them all a lot. But the reality is Nick Saban and that team are there. They're there every year. And that's hard. And so we want to definitely replicate this and maintain and sustain results. So this is what's really, really exciting. 2 years ago, July 24th, 2017, and shortly thereafter, we had a retreat, and I go back to that post-it that you all said we wanted to be the fastest improving. Hamilton County Schools is proving itself to be the fastest improving school system in the state of Tennessee. So in 2016, 2017, our school system ranked, based on that growth index, as 130 out of 144 school systems. So definitely not where we want it to be. 2017-18, last year, our first year with data in our capacities, you saw us really cut that in half. So we moved from 130 to number 77 out of 146 districts. In 2018-19, we moved to number 2 out of 146 districts. And we are officially the best improving school system in the state of Tennessee. We rose 148 spots as a school district in regards to improvement. And again, I give so much of that credit to you as a board. I give so much of that credit to our teachers and leaders. And I will say this, and I'm going to say this, and I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it. People talk about how much leaders make. People talk about how much teachers make. People talk about central office. There's always that conversation. It takes great leadership to support teachers. And I'm so proud of our district leaders. I'm so proud of our school level leaders. I'm so proud of our teacher leaders. And I'm proud of our and I'm proud of our support staff. Another thing, we had the chance to go to Howard today and see that building come to life. And we did all that internally. Justin Witt and that team did all of that internally and made that work happen. My gosh, David Eaves, I've emailed you 52 times in the last 4 days. We got that Hickson situation fixed. Not that situation. We're getting closer on your situation. Between the routing and getting kids squared where they need to be, so much response to. So I say all that to say it takes everybody to get our school system to this point. So let's do this. Next slide. We want to retire being the fastest improving school system in the state of Tennessee. It's kind of like Disneyland. Once you've been there, you're done. So we just want to be the best school system in this district in the state of Tennessee. So, very proud of our team. We'll take any questions at this time. Mrs. Robinson.
Really just a comment. I'm pumped to go to the state school board meeting in November because they always have something to talk about with Hamilton County. And stuff on the board, it's not always been great stuff, but this time they're going to say, how did y'all do it? And it's going to be awesome. So, great job everyone. It's been awesome.
Okay. All right. We will move on to our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any items from me?
I'd like to pull 6D1K, the iReady bid. I would like to pull 6D1L, related to the elementary ELA pilot, and 6D4A, the grant application request.
Okay, Mr. McClendon?
6D1D, the desktop Simply Mac contract or approval.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I think it's 6D1D. The new thing doesn't have the Roman numerals on here, so.
Okay, any other items? Alright.
Dr. Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Lennon,
Yes.
Mr. McClendon.
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman,
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. Okay, we'll start with you, Mrs. Hill.
Thank you. So the iReady Curriculum Associates contract,
I pulled this because I just want to better understand our relationship in this. So
I see that this includes iReady for 2 charter schools, the elementary and the middle school for Chattanooga Charter School of Excellence. So help me understand how that works with our funding and our responsibilities.
So are you wanting to know about iReady, or you want to know about the relationship with
the total
charter
cost
schools?
includes their cost. So just help me understand how that
So
works.
I believe, well, I don't believe, the thinking is, say they count our results and we're buying bulk. It's not a huge expense for us to add them into it. So thought of just them being part of it for continuity's sake. They come to our trainings, they come to our principal meetings. We thought that it made sense, right, in this instance, to pay for them in this contract.
Okay, so
And I should add that those schools were ATSI schools in the last year for the 17-18 data cycle, and so the State Department does hold us accountable for helping to improve any of the schools that are on the list. And of course, our charters are title funded schools, so they meet the economic disadvantage threshold. So our federal programs office and our accountability office supports our title schools. And I will say that they have, for instance, our benchmarking product. They're a part of that, as well as our Mastery Connect contract. They're a part of that. To Justin's point, we are held accountable for their results. So, and the state does flag for us when there is an accountability designation that we need to show how we're supporting all of our schools to get off of those designation lists.
okay, so we have other charter schools that are using the benchmark software. Is that also off of our benchmark contract?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hey, Dr. Holland, you got a comment on that?
On that one.
Do we have other schools that we are directly responsible? We're only indirectly responsible for the charter schools, correct? If they
Tell me more about
don't, if they don't achieve the way they're supposed to, then we can request their charter be discontinued.
Yeah, they have a 10-year charter agreement at which there is a renewal period. So we do have the opportunity to, at every designation of their charter contract period, that we review it, and we could bring it to the board and say that we, should recommendations on renewing or not renewing the charter. I believe that we've had 2 of them that have come
but for renewal before I got here that were approved for renewal. But otherwise, the only way that a charter agreement is revoked is if they are under the state law in the priority school status for 2 cycles. So it's that designation of kind of moving down the accountability continuum, but we don't have any charter schools that are on the priority school list that would be under that type of statutory threat right now.
And I certainly hope they don't. I want them to be successful. But I'm concerned that the schools that we're directly responsible for, some of which may need this funding, and we're going to charter schools before we do. I know there are some schools that could use this funding that we are directly responsible for rather than charter schools. I wish we would expand our finances on the schools that have the needs that we're directly over when they have funding of their own to buy things with.
I want to make sure that we're clear. This is an adaptive learning grant that the state provided which schools were eligible. So only title schools were eligible with a priority on schools that had a designation.
Correct.
So we couldn't include anyone beyond what they told us.
We had title schools that were eligible that were not servicing with this, correct?
And can I provide some further context to this? So the adaptive technology is in excess of what we're already doing. There's an item that didn't get pulled that's right prior to it that is for iReady. So iReady, we use it as a universal screener that every kid has to use for math and reading. This one's for reading. So that's part of it. The other part is we're paying across the board for every K through 8 school up to 15% of their student body access to the instructional portion of iReady. The adaptive technology is taking it to 100% in those schools. So we're not paying for 100% across the board. We're paying up to 15% across the board for all the K through 8s. And actually they added that they could open up some seats for our 9th graders that are, reading way below grade level. They could access this as well. So you're looking at 2 separate items that kind of work in combination together.
And their scores play into our scores, and so in that way, it makes sense to work together. It's just the funding pieces.
That's right. So the funding for the adaptive learning grant, just to put a finer point on what Justin just said, was only eligible for schools that were designated as ATSI or priority schools. Those are the schools that you see listed in this item. Red Bank Middle was also an ATSI school for this 17-18 data cycle. So that's why these are called out. That's
so every single ATSI school is being serviced.
That's right.
Every single one. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. The other.
Mrs. Hill, do you want to put the motion to approve
certainly.
that item?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve 6D1K.
You have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Ford.
Dr. Highlander.
Yes.
Mrs. Hill.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mrs. Lennon.
Yes.
Mr. McClendon.
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman.
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. Okay, Mrs. Hill.
The next one, 6D1L, is adding normal parking to a magnet into the purchasing additional materials for them as part of the ELA pilot. And it's interesting how we're adding more schools in. And so I just wondered if you could help me understand, did everybody that wanted to be a part of it get to be a part of it? How did you choose what schools are in this ELA pilot and why is it growing?
So everyone had an opportunity to be part of it. I think why you're seeing it growing is that as data's coming back and as principals are looking at resources that are available to them and maybe hearing what other principals are saying, more and more are asking, hey, is it too late? And to be flat out honest with you, I would rather bring it to you and ask than us get into May of 2020 and see a school that asked me late, can I be a part of it? And we said no. That didn't do as well as they could have. So this is a request that Robert Sharp and I talked to Carrie Wilmore, who's the principal of Normal Park. She requested the resource, and so we're bringing it to you.
So every school that has requested to be in the pilot has
everyone that's gone through their executive director that's brought a request, we're going to continue to bring to you, and we're doing some other things to support non-pilot schools because we recognize one of the things that you saw up there is a next step is accelerating literacy and the need to put on grade level tests in front of kids, and so those that are not taking part of the pilot. We're not just leaving them without a resource. We're going to give them funds, and we've given them a recommended text list that they can use those funds to purchase text from that list.
Okay. Thank you. I motion that we approve that.
Second.
All right, Mrs. Ford.
Dr. Highlander.
Yes.
Mrs. Hill.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mrs. Lennon.
Yes.
Mr. McClendon.
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman.
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. Mrs. Hill, did you have one more? Is that right?
Do you have one more?
Okay.
It's 6D4A. It's the grant application request for the adaptive learning technology grant. So just the way that our policy works, that we need to approve before we actually submit a grant request like this. I got very turned around on all the dates. It almost seemed like we had missed all the dates for this grant. And so I just wondered if you could just help me understand.
I'm not sure I understand the dates issue. I know that this one had a quick
Driven by
turnaround from the State Department, right?
Yeah,
So
it said that there's a timeline that started June 28th, and that that districts must have the software purchased and ready to implement by August 15th. But then I saw the dates were not for 2020; they were for 2019. And
so it has to do with the way the state is using carryover funding. So this is one of the things where the state comes and says, we have this money, you can use it as long as you can turn it around quickly. So as you said, it started July 28th, which is not very long ago for us to do a massive grant application. We actually have to have a purchase order by today. And in fact, we are sitting ready, if the board approves this, to actually issue the purchase order after the board meeting, so that we're in compliance with what the state has requested, and they can then fund this if approved by the board.
Okay.
And the software that you discussed earlier is in the line item for this grant budget.
all right, well, thanks for moving fast on my guys.
We got a second.
Second.
Okay.
Dr. Highlander.
Yes.
Mrs. Hill.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
yes.
Mrs. Lennon.
Yes.
Mr. McClendon.
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman.
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. All right, Mr. McClendon.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull it back up. On this, I guess it's for Simply Mac to help with the repairs and stuff for iPads that are out of warranty. Is this giving us a discount of any type? I don't know if it is, or if we sign a contract, there was nothing attached, saying iPad costs screen, which mine's cracked, so I need to get it fixed. But is it going to be a discount of any sort?
This is more of a legacy thing, but it's for the schools to be able to use the vendor, an approved vendor by the board, so that they can get a service done for their Macs.
Gotcha. Just because,
just to clarify, this is to add 3 separate vendors.
Right, 3 separate vendors are being added to do Apple.
Gotcha. Just because I know, for some reason with Apple, it's cheaper to buy a new device than replace the screen, especially on iPad. So I just didn't know if it was. It's like a $10 difference if you look at it. So
There's no discounts. Just using local people versus.
We would save money on shipping.
Right.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just didn't know if logistically, if it made sense for us to replace screens or just buy kind of new stuff.
And our Apple usage is going down with Chromebooks rollout too as well. So.
Okay. Move to flip back on.
All right, that's it.
Second.
Dr. Highlander.
Yes.
Mrs. Hill.
Yes.
Mrs.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Mrs. Lennon.
Yes.
Mr. McClendon.
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman.
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. All right, so I believe that brings us to administrative business matters. Yes, Mrs. Thurman.
Well, I'm not sure. I guess I can ask. I have a question to ask that really
I guess we'll just go ahead and finish up this before we finish up. I want to ask something.
All right, so first here, under administrative business matters, request for new position, parent volunteer coordinator at East Hamilton. Mr. Bowman or Dr. Robertson?
This is a position funded by the cane raisers at East Hamilton. It's a position funded by the cane raisers at East Hamilton. It'll be for 1 year, and it's a parent volunteer coordinator.
Any discussion? All right, we'll have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I just want everybody to know this is self-funded. We're not approving another position.
Speak the second, Mrs. Ford.
Mr. McClendon. Dr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. Hill.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mrs. Lennon.
Yes.
Mr. McClendon.
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson. Yes. Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman.
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. All right. Now we have disciplinary hearing authority. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Johnson.
Yeah, so this is, as Scott spoke to in the policy session, a 9-member team. Brad and King Bradshaw and Scott have been doing yeoman's work to get this established. Actually, it's law that we do this. 9-member team, actually, they were here. What was that? I came down there yesterday. I believe it was. Yeah, you had hearings going on, and so this will put us in compliance. There's at least one person on the team from each learning community representative, and gives us official disciplinary hearing authority.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Dr. Highlander.
Yes.
Mrs. Hill.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mrs. Lennon.
Yes.
Mr. McClendon.
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson. Yes. Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman.
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. Okay, Mrs. Thurman.
Okay, I wasn't sure when the good time to bring this up, but since we've been over all of the policies, and Kathy's done a good job doing that terrible task, but she's done a good job. I would like to, and I've talked it over with Scott a little bit, about making a policy about professional development. I know on the applications for professional development, it has, on some of them, it has it, they can be videoed. I know some of the people that are doing the professional development do not want it videoed. We need to have a policy that all videos for professional development are vetted through the office, all out of town professional development. The ones that are in town, I think we probably know pretty much what they're going to be, but the ones out of town. I'm not sure what a policy would look like with this, Scott, but I think it's something that we need to look at. Do you see any drawback in having a new policy? I know we can't get policy strapped, but I think this is something that we need to do, because I think it would be good for lots of reasons. Number one, transparency. Number two, I think the public has a right to see what their tax dollars are paying for. And number three, people who are not able to go to professional development sessions can watch it at their leisure whenever that they can have time. So, I would just like to know if we can get a policy maybe for the board to look over, get one together, what it would look like.
Sure, we can certainly kick that around. I'll point out that, as you referenced, the form that the administration has folks who come to present, really any contractor who has any kind of contact with their teachers or their students. Our form actually gives the administration the right to audio or video record whatever they're presenting. And it's there, but the truth is, I don't really know when that was inserted, and I frankly don't know if that's ever been done, because when you think about it, it's kind of tedious, actually. But it's certainly there as a safeguard. Now, one thing that we have seen in the last 6 weeks is that for some reason, we found a lot of presenters who have scratched that out and said, but they don't agree to be videotaped. That's been in there for literally years, and I can't remember anyone objecting to it. And suddenly, in the last little bit, I think Preston Gonter and I have seen people saying, no, we don't want you videotaping our presentations. And I get that because it's their intellectual property, it's how they earn their living, and they don't want anything pirated. So I completely understand why people have that reservation. And I do a lot of presentations too, but I don't particularly care if folks video it. So it seems to me that there's probably a way that we can do this where we can reserve the right to keep track of what is presented, but yet we protect their copyright interests in their work, because that's how these people earn a living. So I'll have to think about it, and we'll talk to some people about maybe what their concerns are, and we'll try to work through it. One thing that you mentioned vetted. One thing that I would simply say, as someone who does a lot of presentations, I'm frequently changing my slides the day of, and I haven't had a conversation with the administration about this, but I think you would cause their heads to explode if you said you need to vet every presentation given in the district before it's given, because you're putting a burden on those folks when they got to watch kids and they got to teach school. But I hear what you're saying.
No, I'm talking about the out-of-town people that come in. I'm not talking about the ones who do it. These guys. I mean,
who's going to vet it though? I think that's what Scott is saying. Is whoever's.
I heard you say something.
Somebody's supposed to be vetting it now. Am I wrong, Dr. Johnson? Somebody's supposed to be vetting it now.
We'll cut all external presentations. That's easy, and we can work with Scott on the policy. We'll draft a policy. Scott will draft a policy, and we can definitely look at those couple of things ready. Easy and straightforward.
These are things that are very doable, and we're chewing on them. And what I'm saying is, there's already a system in place, but we need to get some thought.
I just one thing. I think it's only, like I said, for transparency, and if the taxpayers are paying for it, I think they have a right to know.
Sure.
So I just think it's something we need to look at.
Yeah, we will absolutely have that conversation, and I've got some ideas. I just don't want to do anything that puts a burden on a lot of building level administrators. And you're right, these people are vetted with their body of work. So for instance, someone comes in, Ms. Levine's office maybe is looking for someone who can present on how do you pursue student growth in literacy. And so she's familiar with the body of work that someone has. So these people are being vetted. What we're looking at is how do we keep track of what is presented. There's a way to do it.
It puts a burden on us if we don't do it. So, I think it's something we need to look at and figure it out. We're not going to do it.
We'll get to it.
And if they don't want to comply, there's lots of people out there.
Dr. Highlander.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but I believe our policy now is that they have to. You say they're scratching out of the contract, our policy, where we're not allowed to.
It's a contract. So it's not a policy. It's our contract. So we have a contract that a form contract that we enter into with really anyone who's coming in from the outside to provide service. And there's everything from insurance coverage to background checks. And one of the provisions, I think it's paragraph 5, is that we reserve a right to video whatever it is that they're doing. For years, that has not been an issue, and then suddenly we've had some people, mostly professional presenters, who have said, no, we don't want you to do that, because that's how we earn our dime. And so I totally understand where they're coming from. There has to be a way that we can do this.
That's what I'm saying. There needs to be, and I appreciate the one that's been in question that people are tiptoeing around. If we could see that in its entirety, then it would cut down, it would dispel myths and errors. And by not saying it, we can't dispel any disparity that's in there. And so I think we should be able to view it. And for transparency, we've talked about we want transparency, and we need to dispel any problems. It can be. I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm not trying to make a value judgment on something I haven't seen. But as I and other board members said, I would like to be able to see a presentation and question. And as far as who does it, the administrator that brings them in should be the one responsible for vetting. And you can't get a specific vetting because you know it's going to be different every time. They're going to have adaptions that are going to come in. I think we should be able to video it, and if someone misses it, they need to be able to see it and make it up. But I understand their problem too. It's their intellectual property, so it's a dilemma.
Mrs. Hill.
So, if we choose to move forward with drafting a policy, I think it would be really important for us to think about the intent of the policy. So, the goal is transparency for the public, to develop a thoughtful public interface where they would be able to access the videos and know when they were given and what the topic was. Also, I mean, I think if we're going to do anything like that with out of town, I think it makes sense to do in town, because if the intent of the policy is for our taxpayers to know what we're doing, then I think all of them should be there. That said, unfunded mandates, right? Because then I think we would need to consider the cost to produce the video. We would have to have a staff member there to produce it. We wouldn't want to have, if the intent is to provide resources to the public and resources to our teachers. We've talked about how we want excellent resources for our teachers. So I don't think just a cell phone video would be what we would be going for if we're creating an actual archive and library of our professional development. So just some things to think about. I think, Scott, it's probably more than just drafting a document that sounds good, but really creating a procedure. I see it more as a procedure than a policy.
Mrs. Mosley Jones.
Jenny was like channeling my energy or something. Because I was thinking this probably is more of a procedural thing than a policy. I do want to say that we have to be careful when we start to implement policies based on certain situations, because what happens is what our goal is in trying to expose our professionals to the best professional development that we can. We're going to begin to limit them, because I know for me, when I present, I don't release my information. Even if it's in church, I'm not going to give you my presentation, because you can take my presentation and go present it. And then, like Scott is saying, the intellectual property is gone. I've worked hard for my 10 slides with my kids in church or whatever it is. I'm just saying, you have to think about people put their work into things, and I think when we have situations of which we're speaking of, where people are stating around the issue, when you have situations such as this is dancing around, you have to think about what the true content was, and everybody that was in that room knows what that presentation was about. And I am a taxpayer in the county and the city, and I don't need a copy of it to know what it was about. I've been in a implicit bias training myself, and so I know what it was about from just the 2 slides that went across the news channel 9, 3, 12, 61, and CNN. I mean, I knew from the 2 slides there was an implicit bias training. I had no lack of knowledge, no ignorance in that. I knew from there because I sat in many of those trainings. So I think before we begin to dance around the issue, and I probably am making somebody upset, and I'm sorry, but I'm just very upset about everybody dancing around this. A professional came in and made a presentation, of which they've made presentations across the country, just like everybody else comes in here and makes presentations, just like we go to conferences and hear presentations. We're going to November to presentations, we hear it all the time. It was a presentation about something that I learned in graduate school in 2004, and I've learned and been in presentations throughout from that. It is what it is. And it's not new. Nobody was teaching anybody anything. And it's just really frustrating, because in 2019, we should not be sitting on this dais talking about this or dancing around a potential policy for something such as this, when people get trained on a lot of things. People get trained on using bleach for color. Some people get trained on using foil for color. Some people get trained on taking notes a certain way. Some people get trained for taking notes on a computer. Everybody teaches differently. The content is the same. And I'm going to tell you personally, right now, as of today, I'm not going to come to a policy meeting for that, because it's a procedure. And it's freedom of speech. And you can agree to disagree, and that's your freedom of speech. That's what's great about being an American. And I have to say that because I've gotten too many phone calls while I'm trying to enjoy my sweet little baby who don't know the difference between my color and Jill's. But when he's big enough, I'm going to have a conversation with him about those 2 slides. Because that's the life we live. And that's the lives our students live. And that's the lives that our teachers live, our administrators live, that's the life we live. When we get those calls, that is America. The world, society. And if people don't like it, once again, the great thing about being American is we agree to disagree. But I'm telling you now, if we create a policy, this one vote you won't have, because I'm not agreeing to a policy today.
Mrs. Stern.
First, I don't dance. You ask anybody in my family. My mother dances, my sister dances, I don't dance. No, I did not. No, I was just trying to be kind. I've been on the TV, I've been on the radio, I've been on the newspaper, I've been on jmoon.com. I don't dance.
Well, people haven't been kind
I don't dance.
Hang on, guys. Hey, whoever's microphone is lit up, it's got the floor.
Thank you. You know, like I say, I don't dance. I've let it be known how I do. I'm not, I don't weasel around things like this. Anybody that knows me, Dr. Johnson, I talked with him over an hour yesterday about this. So I came right straight to the source and talked about it. Like I say, this is not my school board. This was singling out a group of people. Like you say, you have to say, you're not black, I'm not white, we're all different shades of brown, we're all members of the human race, and that's what it ought to be. So to call out a group of people, and I saw a lot more than 2 slides. I've seen some video. I've seen about 5 slides, and I've seen video, and I've seen video of some of the presentation, and I've also seen a video that was shown there. So I've seen a whole lot more than 2 slides. And like I say, I know a lot of people are upset about this, and I just want to be sure it doesn't happen again, because this has been hurtful in the community. I just don't want it to happen. I don't want it to happen about anything. I don't care if you bring in something about, you know, if you want to bring in something about the LGBTQ, I think they've added an A on the end of it now, to a presentation. If this is what's going to come in, the parents have a right to see it. I don't care what it is. I don't care what kind of presentation it is. The taxpayers of this town have a right to see it. And if there's no problem, then there's no problem. And that's where I'm coming from. Like I say, I don't dance.
All right, so that brings us to announcements. Labor Day holiday, September the 2nd. Also, September the 4th will be a half day for students, but buses will run. And then our next formal board meeting will be on September the 19th. Priscilla, you have an announcement?
I was contacted by a member of the school board in Nashville, and there is a group called, I'm calling it right now, Pastors for Tennessee's Children, I believe is the name of it. Yes. And they started in Texas, Pastors for Texas Children in Texas. But anyway, there's going to be a breakfast coming up, and I'll forward all of you the information. The intent and the goal is to mobilize churches and pastors to support public education and work toward solid education policy in Tennessee. So I think it's something that a lot of our community would be really interested in, and I'm excited that there is a groundswell of interest to bring it to our state.
The day is Saturday, August 24th, at 10 a.m.
All right, any other announcements? Meeting adjourned.